about that when you've got it in, a good handful of studies have all shown the same things.
We know that for COVID itself, certainly people who tend to develop worse symptoms of COVID, it tends to be that there's a bias the other way, in the sense that it's men who the statistics show have more worse symptoms. Is there any understanding at this stage as to why women seem to be more at risk of developing long COVID?
So if I go back to the acute setting, so men are more likely to have acute COVID that leads into more severe disease, and those who are older are also more affected. And there is a concept around immune senescence, and there's also an increased inflammatory response in men compared to women. So to some of this hyperinflammatory effect that might then lead on to the acute lung injury. It's important to remember again that you can be of either sex and you can be of any age, but it is more common in those who are men and older. In long COVID, as you said, the demographics are different, and the demographics are actually more similar to what we would see in things like autoimmune conditions such as rheumatoid arthritis. So this has led us to then consider whether there may be an ongoing inflammatory response and possibly an immune-mediated response that's then affecting this group.
It's apparent from what you say, perhaps two things. First of all, that although it's the acute COVID that triggers long COVID, they are actually really quite different conditions, and therefore these different profiles can be readily explained. But secondly, as we've heard from other witnesses, it's still very early days in understanding long COVID, and it may be that in months or years' time you understand these matters better.
It's extremely likely that there's more than one mechanism that's actually driving long COVID. And one of the things that we're working very hard at is to try and understand what are those underlying drivers. So I mentioned a little bit earlier about one of the groups that have this persistent inflammation. And this is really critical, because then that could lead us on to more of what we would think of as a precision medicine approach, where we would then have diagnostics that then could start to pick up what might be driving your type of long COVID. And then most importantly, then actually lead on to different treatment strategies for different people.
Yeah. I said I'd come back